Hello, everyone. Mr. H here with you. Welcome to Post-Napoleonic Europe. Welcome to the concert of Europe. That has absolutely nothing to do with music. The funny thing about the English language is it has, words with more than one meaning. So concert could also mean cooperation. So the leading powers of Europe, i.e. the people who won the Napoleonic Wars, Britain, Austria, Prussia, Russia, are going to operate in concert, cooperate with each other to prevent another Napoleonic War scenario. In other words, prevent revolutions, keep monarchies in place, keep the revolution from overthrowing the monarchy. Think of kind of a League of Nations or United Nations sort of precursor. So, like I said, Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia are part of this thing. They're going to keep their eyes open for revolution and make sure it doesn't happen. Hey, France gets to join the club in 1818. They've been rehabilitated because they used French troops to put down a revolution in Spain. There was another revolution in Portugal in 1820. Britain kind of managed that. So keep revolutions contained inside a country, keep it from overthrowing the monarchy, keep it from attacking countries around and overthrowing monarchies. This is called the era of reaction. This is the opposite of revolution. Reaction. Revolution, overthrow the existing order. Reaction, keep the existing order. Maybe drop back a little bit further back into time. No revolutions. Hashtag no revolutions if they had Instagram back then. So who are the architects of this stuff? Well, the concert of Europe is being led by Clemens von Metternich of Austria. He's the foreign minister for Austria, kind of like a secretary of state. Foreign minister in Great Britain is Lord Castlereagh. It was Robert Stewart before he got his title. You know how people are when they get titles. They kind of forget where they came from. And of course, Alexander the First of Russia right here, the guy who fought off Napoleon there in the freezing cold. He is the arch reactionary. This guy, these guys want to keep it stuck there in 1814, maybe turn it back to 1798. This guy would be happy going back to 1498. Here's a picture of Alexander in his younger days. I don't know what's up with the mohawk. Must have been watching Rocky 3 over and over. Who knows? Now here's Europe in 1815. As you can see, they're trying to keep France hemmed in because they're completely convinced that France is insane. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but the problem with this is that time will march on, buddy. 1815 becomes 1816, 1816 becomes 1817. So things are going to change the further away you get from 1815. But France was the recent aggressor, so they're going to try and keep France hemmed in case any future aggressor comes out of Paris and tries to pull another Napoleon, because it almost happened with Napoleon, right? They defeated Napoleon, sent him there to the island of Elba. He got loose, ate the 100 days in Waterloo. They beat him, and they sent him back down to St. Helena, way down here in the South Atlantic. He dies there in 1821. So here they are trying to keep France hemmed in. Netherlands looks bigger than it usually does. They merge it with Belgium. Not going to work out. They split in 1832. Prussia's a lot bigger. Look at this. They got a common border with France. Prussia's a good army. Germany here with Austria is always mixed up in it. Switzerland's got the mountains over here. Sardinia got the Alps, right? So these guys, and of course there's Spain with the Pyrenees. So they're trying to keep France hemmed in from any, sort of revolution again. Had a revolution in Spain in 1818. Actually sent French troops there. They took care of it, kept the revolution contained. Revolution in Portugal in 1820. Britain, Portugal, been friends a long time. The British go down there, they kind of manage it, keep it from spreading and going insane. Hey, what's this line here? This is the Confederation of Germany. Remember the Holy Roman Empire? That was a joke. Confederation of Germany? Yep, same thing, right? Except this would be run basically by Austria and Prussia. They fight with each other over influence of Germany, and that's eventually going to lead to problems between those two. But for right now, everyone's trying to keep France hemmed in. It's very conservative, no revolutions. Keep the clock stuck at 1815, maybe try to push it back to 1789. Hey, revolution in Greece. Everybody gets behind this revolution because they have the romantic notions of, ancient Athens and democracy and Sparta and all this kind of stuff. So when the Greek Revolution explodes in 1821, Mr. H's ancestors mixed up in that one down here. That's where I got named Hassapus. It means butcher. Allegedly, one of my ancestors butchered 20 Turks in a canyon. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I don't know. Knowing my family, somebody stole a couple chickens and the whole story got blown up out of proportion from there. But hey, who knows? Well, the Greek Revolution explodes in 1821, and what does the concert of Europe do? They intervene on the side of the Greeks. The Russians show up with a fleet, attacking way up here. The French and the British are here, and Greece will become an independent country in 1830. It takes a while, but they get there. All right. And they set up a little monarchy in Greece. Right? Monarchy, no revolution, just a monarchy. And everyone's happy. See, managing revolutions. Keep Spain in check. They got Portugal taking care of revolution in Greece. We've created a new country that has a monarchy. How about that? Well, speaking of turning the clock back, there's Russia. Now, Alexander dies in 1825. His son Nicholas is going to succeed him. And we have a December's revolt, day after Christmas, Boxing Day, December 26th, because everyone opened their presents first. Well, 3,000 soldiers in the Russian army, led by their officers, kind of have a standoff there at St. Petersburg, demanding a constitutional monarchy, which by Russian standards is really wild. Nicholas I isn't having that, and they've got a standoff over here. Well, there were a couple of shots exchanged, but nothing major. They eventually end up arresting the offending officers. Where did they get this idea from? Well, remember, they've been across Europe here, and they fought against the French and spent time in France, and all these ideas, crazy stuff, man, stuff like democracy and representative government, are seeping into Russia. And, the Russian Tsar doesn't want any part of this, so, those guys get sent out. Nicholas I is going to be very conservative. I guess when you attempt to overthrow him the first day of his reign, it kind of has an effect on people. But he's a kinder, gentler sort of absolute monarch. He isn't going to execute these people. No, no, the offending officers get sent to Siberia. Yes, cue the music. Want to build a snowman because that's about all you're going to be able to do out here. And, well, consider them lucky. Didn't get the head chopped off and put on a pike somewhere in the middle of St. Petersburg or the Kremlin in Moscow. So, as far as Russia is concerned, this is actually being nice. This is Russian liberalism for you. Well, Nicholas, as you guess, is going to be extremely conservative. Like I said before, you attempt to overthrow the guy in the first day of his reign, that's going to have an effect. This becomes part of the Tsar's oath. Orthodoxy, autocracy, and nationality. Orthodoxy, the Russian Orthodox Church. Autocracy, absolute rule, and nationality, Russian nationalism. This is what Nicholas I is all about. These three pillars of his regime. If you go anywhere near them or look at them funny, you're headed straight to Siberia. He's the no revolutions hashtag kind of guy. And he looks like a revolution. He's in on it. Missed out on Greece. But hey, when the revolutions of 1848 sweep across Europe, they have them in Germany where they get put down by the Prussians and Austrians. You're going to have one in France. We'll talk about that in a second. Some in Italy. You've got a revolution in Austria. And what happens there? The Hungarians rise up because they're a big chunk of the country, and Russia sends troops to intervene, helping out the Austrians. Eventually, Austria makes a deal with the Hungarians, and now it becomes the Austro/Hungarian Empire. So Hungary gets some elevated status out of this. Nicholas is not very happy because he wants it to look exactly the way it did when he came back. Tells you what kind of guy Nicholas is, all up until 1855. Alexander II, that's his son, shows up in 1855. Nicholas had blundered into the Crimean War. Crimean War happened 1853 when Russia and Turkey went to war with each other. They always do, the Ottoman Turks and the Russians. The Russians are trying to grab Constantinople so they can get out into the Mediterranean. Plus, there's the historical link with Byzantium. And, France and Britain become alarmed and side with the Turks against the Russians. Even Sardinia shows up. They got their own, motivation for that. Well, Russia's going to lose in 1856, and Alexander II realizes things kind of have to change. All right, so instead of kicking Russia being, kicked and dragged into the 19th century, he figures they can kind of tiptoe their way into the 17th. Well, look at this. He liberates the serfs in 1862. Alexander II was actually an admirer of Abraham Lincoln. He sent a Russian fleet to New York and a Russian fleet to San Francisco in support of the Union during our Civil War against the Confederacy. And in 1862, he liberates the serfs. Yeah, note that date. Um, well, the serf system, first, the fact you even have serfs, all right, in the mid 19th century tells you how far back Russia is. But that system had been getting dismantled since Napoleon's invasion in 1812, since the peasants were loyal to Russia. So in 1862, it's just a paper drill, but it's very symbolic. So he's a bit of a reformer. The Russian secret police, the Okhrana, it gets kind of pulled back a little bit here. He's not quite as autocratic. And then someone tried to kill him in 1866, and out come the clamps. Starts clamping everything down again after someone tried to kill him. By the way, assassination is how you spell it, right? Assassination. There's two asses. The one who gets shot and the guy who tries to shoot him. I remember that one from high school. Well, as you can see, he's going to die in 1881. And it wasn't peaceful. Nope, they finally did get to him. Terrorist group called the People's Will, wants a democracy and possibly communism, blew up his carriage, sent a bomb near his carriage. They missed the first time, and they got him the second one. And, yeah, it didn't work out too well. Here's the propaganda they put out here. See, look, half his leg got blown off, and he bled out before anybody could do anything. So it's going to lead to Alexander III, and what do you think Alexander III is going to land on the liberal conservative spectrum there? Yep, even further to the right, even more conservative, especially when they killed his father. And then, of course, we've got Nicholas II after him, and he's the guy on the throne when the whole communist revolution happens. Worry about that when we get there. The thing everyone's worried about, though, is France. France is 19th century Europe's version of Florida Man. Yep, they're the ones everyone's always worried about because France has a revolution of, has a tendency of, going bonkers and having revolutions all the time. It must come from drinking, wine on an empty stomach every day or something. I don't know. But when Napoleon was deposed the first time, they put Louis XVIII on the throne. The Bourbon Restoration, because, he's related to Louis XVI. Of course, he got the comma there because Napoleon came back and Louis had to run. He comes back again in 1815. And the first thing he tries to do is try to turn the clock back. But you can't, dude. They will have a constitutional monarchy. Britain's fine with that. Austria can live with it because it keeps France under control. And he doesn't like it very much. But there's really not a lot you can do because the legislature controls the money. Plus, France is broke. They've been broke. They were broke before Napoleon. All those wars didn't help. And now they're even more broke. And you can't turn the clock back to 1789 because it's 1815, which can be followed by 1816 and 1817 and 1818. Yes, time marches on. Well, it marches all the way to 1824 and he dies. Here comes his son, Charles X, another reactionary. He's only around for 6 years because, well, he didn't read his history book or take Mr. H's history class. And we've got ourselves a revolution in 1830. Just when Greece becomes free, France goes bonkers. Big surprise. France always goes bonkers. Not too many people got killed, and they replaced one monarch with another. Louis Philippe, who's actually a distant cousin of Charles II, and he is what they call the citizen king. He's always out there with the crowds, and everybody loves him, and no security. So they've had a revolution and replaced the one monarch with another monarch who's not quite as strict. So the Concert of Europe is okay with this. But I don't know, as time goes on, he starts becoming more and more autocratic and more strict, and he's ignoring the legislature and everything. I don't know what it is with these guys. They come in as reformers and they start getting tighter as time goes on. I don't know. Is that something that happens when they turn into old farts? I don't know. So they got tired of Louis Philippe and they had the June Revolution of 1848. Should have put that in there. And they set up a republic. Uh-oh, seen this before. Overthrow the monarchy and a republic. Actually, it wasn't that big a deal. Louis Philippe decides to go retire and live in Great Britain, so nobody got the head lopped off, and we got ourselves a second republic. As you can see, it's only around for 4 years. Why? Because it doesn't work. They've got so many political parties, they got so much gridlock, does it sound familiar? Nothing can get done. They can't even have trouble electing a president, but they do have an election for a second president, and guess who they pick? Louis Napoleon! Oh my God, a guy named Napoleon. That's right, it's his nephew. What's he doing there? He's trying to make the republic work. He gets tired of it. Notice it ends in 1852. You know why? Well, what do you think's going to happen? History repeats itself. A monarch gets overthrown. We got a republic that doesn't work. A guy named Napoleon shows up, launches a coup. Hey, we got the Second French Empire. with Napoleon III. So don't you think the rest of Europe would freak out? Well, it's 1852. 1815 was a long time ago. Plus, Louis Napoleon here, Napoleon III he calls himself, he actually gets along with the British. He spent a lot of time there with the British. He lived in Great Britain for a while. He tried to overthrow the Republic a couple times. It didn't work, so he just got elected. And he gets along great with the British. Plus, with the Crimean War, remember? French and British soldiers fighting alongside each other against the Russians. Yeah, he's fine. Everybody likes him. So 1854 to 1856, he's fighting alongside the British and the Sardinians, who got their own reason for this. And yeah, it's great. We've shed blood together in the same mud. Everyone's happy. Now, the French Empire, you expect conquest, especially with a guy named Napoleon. Prices rise a little bit every year, but everybody's wages are rising, so they're happy. And now they want military glory. Guy named Napoleon intervenes in Italy in 1859 there with the Sardinians as they're attempting to unite Italy. He gets Savoy and Genoa, not Genoa, Savoy back along with Nice, and leaves the job half done. Then he decides to conquer Vietnam over in Southeast Asia and work his way up into China through trade. That's going to come back to bite him one day. Then gets mixed up in Mexico. Yeah, right there in 1860. Same time we've got a civil war here in the United States. And the Monroe Doctrine, he decides to ignore it and try to take over Mexico, who was having some unstable times. Of course, the United States is not happy about it, but we're busy fighting the Confederacy, can't do much about it. In 1865, that's over, and we tell him time to get lost from Mexico. It wasn't working out too well for the French anyway, so he left. The guy he set up as an emperor, Maximilian, tries to hang on and gets blasted by a firing squad in 1868. Then he blunders into the Franco-Prussian War, and France loses badly. They lose badly to the Germans, the Ems telegram and all that kind of thing. And not only does he lose, he loses the empire. He loses his throne. Prussia unites all of Germany and becomes the strongest power in Europe, possibly the world. Talk about some serious epic fails. Well, at least, he didn't get his head chopped off or sent into exile. He ended up living in Britain again for a while, but eventually let him come back to France. So we've had the Third Republic. See, I tell you something about France. You're up there, Fifth Republic right now. So it's always something going on in France. Never a dull moment. Got the unification of Germany and the unification of Italy coming up. I had some of you guys sent me a humorous email, I think, saying that I've had so many lectures, now you start hearing my voice in your dreams. So I'm going to give you a couple of quick little videos I found about the unification of Germany, unification of Italy. Give you a little break there. I'm not offended. Don't worry about it. The only way you can really offend me is say something bad about my Steelers or my Penguins. If you want to say Pittsburgh Pirates suck, yeah, we just do, right? There's no way around that. All right, I got the unification of Italy and Germany coming up for you, and then it's off to the Industrial Revolution. You guys have yourself a great day, and I'll talk to you later.